Yeah, say it loud, Brandon.
Hot set.
I'm like,
It's also festival season, bumper cars are not out.
This was at 2 and this was once at 4, so I was like, why are you guys opening up the streets? I think they meant to open up South.
We are live.
They probably.
So I gotta try to edit things together.
We're just going wherever.
I'll get it done, but I'm just, annoyed wouldn't be the word, but I'm annoyed.
we're supposed to have 6 council, right?
I'm sure there's plenty of,
Must have said an extra chair on.
Yeah, there's some footage, they went live, I can't rip the video
Yeah.
off Facebook, so I'm gonna try to figure something else out, but it always does.
Joe was still saying that was good, they managed to get everybody lined up, so it's,
Yeah, I thought it was a good job, you know, I thought it
I think
went.
it was somewhere between 4,000 to 5,000 miles.
You guys can fight over the table.
Because going west and then going as far as Utah,
I'm not too
coming
proud, Joe.
around and going up to New York City. It wasn't on the way.
That's right, go for it.
not too proud.
But it was a blast.
See, here's the key, Bob. You gotta have it right at the total zone, the street open, for an authorized distributor.
On the TV out there, or no?
He's got the answers right now.
I got 6 PM, we'll call to order the regular city council meeting for Tuesday, September 14th, 2021. Pastor Chief.
I was thinking about the formation, the early formation of our country. And our founding documents include the idea that our founding fathers wanted to come together and form a more perfect union. And I thought about how difficult that was for them to do that way back then. And here we are, well over 200 years later, and we're still struggling as a nation to form a more perfect union. We feel it on the national level, on the state level. We feel it on the local level as well, because we have a high purpose to form a perfect union, but we have to do so using imperfect people. And that's just the nature of the struggle before us, whether you're forming a church or whether you're running a community, imperfect people doing a truly extraordinary task. That's the task before you guys. And I have a lot of respect for you because I know just how hard that is. Let's pray. Our Heavenly Father, we come before you today and we pray that you would go and pour out great wisdom upon the members of this council. Lord, we thank you for all of the hours and the hard work that they do. Most of them have another career. This is not their full-time job. And yet they expend hour after hour. And Lord, I pray that you would help them to keep that high and lofty goal of a more perfect city before them. Lord, no city will ever be perfect, but let us keep striving towards that goal. That goal that was so well articulated many years ago by President Reagan when he talked about a shining city on a hill. That's our desire for Geneseo, and it's not easy, but we pray, Lord, that with your blessing and your help, we might become ever more a shining city on a hill. Amen.
We could all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Brandon, roll call.
Rothschild, Kennett. Here. Crow. Here. Barnhart. Here. Wachtel. Here. James.
Here.
Samowski. Arnold.
Here.
Okay, we have a quorum. Next on the agenda, Chamber of Commerce report, Zach.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good evening, City Council. I'm here to give the Geneseo Chamber of Commerce update for September 2021. Our current membership numbers, we are 222 members. We have gained 22 members this year. So we're over 10% growth. Very happy with how things are going. We do have a couple new members to report. We have Chris Ani. He is a realtor with Rule and Roll, so he has joined up with the chamber, as well as Vibrant Health Chiropractic out of Cambridge. They're interested in getting involved with our chamber, so we really appreciate that from one of our neighboring communities. We recently, as today, celebrated a ribbon cutting for State Senator Wynn Stoller's district office in Geneseo, right here at City Hall. We had a great celebration right outside, so great turnout for that. And then we have a ribbon cutting coming up on Thursday. Team WTI, Websites to Impress. They're located out on Wolf Road, over where their Hazelwood Homes building used to be. So everyone here is invited to come out and to celebrate that special occasion. They had an office expansion, as well as they never got to have a ribbon cutting because of the COVID happening. So there will be a food truck, and there will be a great occasion right out there on Wolf Road, Team WTI. That's on Thursday at 5:30. Excuse me, 5 o'clock. Event recaps. So we had our Trains, Planes, and Automobiles Festival this past weekend. It's our transportation celebration here in Geneseo. It started off with the Stearman biplane fly-in, where we had 75 Stearman biplanes, World War Era IIs, fly into Jen Air Park outside of town. I was fortunate enough to take a ride on one of those planes on Wednesday and flew over Geneseo. Never quite seen that perspective from that low, so that was very cool. And I'm very grateful to everyone at Jen Air Park for affording me that opportunity and that experience. So that was maximum capacity. We had 75 planes out there. It was very well attended. And then we also have the Cruise the Canal tours. We've had 2 dates so far in August and September. And the September tours were sold out, and the October ones are filling up quickly. We've expanded our fall foliage offerings because they're so popular. So we have a few spots left in October. If anyone's interested, just get a hold of the chamber. The model railroaders were set up over at the Geneseo Communications building with their model train displays. Really cool community type event, family friendly. You get to see up close. And so that was a lot of fun, and the model railroaders really put a lot of work into what they do to help enhance this event, so I want to give kudos to them. And then the Maple City Cruisers Car Show, of course, the main event downtown, where we had 340 cars, over 5,000 people attend, and I mean, this is economic stimulus right here when you get this many people into town. We're happy to be back at it. It was a very successful event. We couldn't have been happier with the weather, of course. It was beautiful the whole time. But the event was marked by a 9/11 remembrance downtown, where we had the VFW as well as Geneseo firefighters, members of the Geneseo Police Department all gather for a national anthem performance, as well as a flyover, which is electrifying yet somber. It's hard to explain that because it's an exciting moment, yet it means a lot because of the 9/11 remembrance. And then we also had the 21-gun salute, and then TAPS was performed. So it was an incredible moment of unity for our community, and that's why I have one of the best jobs in Geneseo, is because we get to help kind of organize things like this. So I'm very grateful for what I get to do. Upcoming events, we have the fall sidewalk sales this weekend, September 17th and 18th. We'll close off State Street for the outdoor pedestrian mall style event to kind of give a little boost to retail. And then we also have 2 farm shows this weekend. We have the Antique Engine and Tractor Association just north of town, the AETA show. That'll be running Friday through Sunday. And then we also have the Vintage Farm Equipment Show, which is over by Atkinson. That'll be on Saturday, September 18th and 19th. Flyers for both of these events can be found right outside. If anyone's interested, you can pick one up afterwards. Allure of Geneseo will also be hosting an open house on Sunday, so if anyone's interested, go take a look at Allure. All of these flyers are out there and available to everyone here. State Street Market is October 2nd, and that's coming up quick. And then Scarecrow Row, our popular Halloween display that we rolled out last year as a result of the pandemic, that's coming back this year. And we're moving the trick-or-treating from downtown to the park. So businesses can still participate, yet we're not going to have all the traffic jam, if you will, getting into the stores. Sometimes get a little congested. This way it's safe. We don't have to worry about traffic at the park. And from our surveying of the community, this is a very popular move. So we'll try it out. We'll have a photo booth, and it's going to be a really fun Halloween celebration. And then, of course, we have the Christmas walk coming up on December 11th. Planning for that is well underway. Quick update on the Small Business Association Community Navigator grant. We're still waiting for a word of approval, but if we're approved, we're going to be receiving a $100,000 grant at the Geneseo Chamber to invest directly into supporting the Geneseo business community, and that'll be over the next 2 years. It's going to allow the Chamber to expand and actually hire a 3rd person. I mean, this is really exciting, and it's just cool to see this happen in 2 years, from my perspective. And then also in regards to improved interstate highway signage, we have a promote committee within the chamber, and we've been discussing this now for several months, and plans on moving forward with our request to get improved interstate signage. The chamber sees this as a business initiative. highlighting services and resources available in Geneseo to travelers, most notably for an emergency reason such as the hospital. Tourism signage can also be discussed at a later date. We're happy to be a part of that discussion, but obviously, big thing we need in Geneseo is investment in advertising. That's what other communities are doing. That's what Geneseo needs to be doing. So I want to kind of stress that to the city council. And then one more quick point for tonight's agenda. I would encourage the council to vote to approve ordinance O-21-10, I think I said that right, pertaining to alcohol and public offenses. This is something that would allow alcohol in open containers, similar to what's been happening in COVID, to become permanent. We haven't had any issues at the Central Bank Pavilion, and we're confident that we won't have any issues if we allow this at our events as long as it's contained within the parameters of our event. So I would encourage the council to approve that ordinance, and that concludes my report. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Zach, could you tell us a little bit more about the signage you're talking about on Interstate?
Yeah, so I've been working a lot with David Smith from Smith Studio and Gallery, and he's a great volunteer and asset to the community. And what we've been working together on is to get interstate signage pointing people towards Geneseo, most notably at exit 6 on Interstate 80, right? Yeah, Interstate 80, and that's over by, no, that's exit 9, excuse me. Exit 9 over at Interstate 80, that's over by Lavender Crest, to have people pointing people towards Geneseo. And that's a direct line right into Geneseo, so we would qualify for that. And then also exit 6 at Interstate 88 over by Joslin, because a lot of Geneseoans and visitors to Geneseo take that exit to access Geneseo from the north, yet it only says Joslin there, and it's kind of cumbersome and can be kind of confusing. And we would like to point people towards Geneseo from that direction as well. Obviously, the emphasis is going to be on the hospitals, right? We're not really doing any tourism with this signage. What we're doing is just to direct people, let them know Geneseo is here. We have resources and services that could be available of benefit to travelers. So that's what we're going for.
Did you say you got the grant, or is still, I missed that one?
We're waiting. We were,
okay.
yeah, we were expecting a word of approval by the end of August, but that never came. But we checked in on it last week, and we're supposed to hear within the next week or two. So fingers crossed.
Anything else from the council? Thanks, Zach.
All right, thank you. Have a nice day.
Moving on the agenda, item number 5, city engineering report.
Lauren can't be with us this evening, but he just wanted to let everybody know that they're doing the final walkthrough on the northeast drainage tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock.
Any discussion or questions for Joe? Moving on, item number 6, public comments related to agenda items. City ordinance allows members of the public to speak and give input up to 3 minutes. During public comment, there can be no debate or action by the city council at this time. Do we have any members of the public?
Just one quick comment and a half a comment. I'll be interested to listen more to the story about the carrying around alcohol in open containers. I don't love the idea, but I'll be interested to hear what it is that you all have to say. I would say, though, the thing that surprised me the most when I looked at the agenda was the sign being near $250,000. And putting that in context, I've sat here now for several years, and I've been hearing about how difficult our fiscal situation is, how we're struggling to maintain our cemeteries, and I know all kinds of creative and even maybe desperate ideas have been formulated on how we solve that. So I have a digital sign at my church. I absolutely love technology. I wouldn't say that I have a formed opinion yet, but I'd appreciate it if the council members would just answer some of probably the public's concern on, is this a little bit of an overbuy? And maybe explain. I don't know if you, for example, had in mind that local businesses would be able to advertise on the sign and that would in some way monetize it. But if it's purely for our own messaging, I just appreciate some answers on why that's a good step right now. I know our fiscal situation isn't nearly as bad as it was. We thought COVID might dish out the worst. We were more resilient than we might have ever dreamed. So I understand that, but at the same point, I know we want to build money for the future, and we have a lot of other infrastructure issues that we've talked about. So I found that item a little bit surprising, although something like the countdown clock in the Kennedy Space Center would be cool, But I just wasn't sure if this was the time for that.
I would just encourage patience and see what the actual tenor and tone of that conversation is before forming assumptions, because I think you might be surprised with what the actual agenda item entails. Any other
Like I
members?
said, my mind's open.
Any other members of the public?
Sean, I do have one to read.
Go ahead.
This is from Don and Vera Beck. And Don says, please do not enter into hasty action regarding signage at the I-80 exit to Geneseo. We should think big and have something that will get people off the interstate, something that will give travelers a photo op. I suggest that you get citizen input on this subject. Don't inhibit thinking by worrying about money. There are grants, and if it is a good project, the chamber, civic organizations, and citizens will come up with the funding. Along with the attraction, we would need messages some distance away along the interstate on private property to the effect of, quote, tourist attraction exit 19, end quote. There are those that will instantly dismiss this suggestion with negative comments, and if they prevail, we will pass up an opportunity to attract travelers' dollars and even potential citizens. Don't rush. Get the community talking, think big, think positive, and resolve that it can be done. Don Beck. And he also has a poem about talking about people said it can't be done, but it got done.
Okay. Chief, any other members of the public in the lobby? Okay. Moving on the agenda, mayor's comments. I have none, other than briefly just acknowledging Zach, the work, the Chamber, the Car Show Committee, everybody put into the weekend was incredible. So, something that started small in Geneseo has really become, if you weren't there, I guess you just can't appreciate it, so, thank you. City council comments, any members of the council?
I do have a comment, and as we all know, election season is on us. Actually, it's not, but I'm really sad to see that we already have 2024 election signs popping up around town. So 3 years, for next 3 years, we're gonna be dealing with, whatever it is, and I could care less about the party. It's just, I think, what makes the town look trashy when you look in and see all these signs. But, doing some Google research, you can't do anything about it. I will remind people that Illinois state law says that the signs have to be no more than 2 feet by 3 feet. They have to be on biodegradable material. They have to be 20 feet from a property line or from any sort of public access, and they cannot be put on public property. So I've seen signs that are put literally right on the sidewalk, on fences, big banners, and those are not legal in Illinois.
Well, I just would encourage you to bring that to the police department's attention.
Right, and I'm hoping just.
I know over the course of a career, we dealt with plenty of
Yeah.
signage issues, so don't let them go by the wayside and be upset by them.
I was just kind of hoping that we could do something that says only 60 days prior, but that's not legal in Illinois, so it's just like, oh my gosh. Anyway, I just thought maybe letting citizens know that there are rules about signage that people probably just don't like that.
Any other members of the council? Okay, item number 9, city administrator comments. None? Okay, moving right along. Agenda item number 10, finance director comments. Jamie?
All right, so the first item I have up is the budget book. We are right on target with our budget, if not finishing lower than expected in a lot of the areas. Does anybody have any questions on the budget?
When you say low, you mean expenses?
Expenses are lower, yeah, yes. Yeah. The revenues are actually coming in higher.
Scroll down a little bit. Scroll down a little bit. Now click on the capital asset.
Oh, for instance, sorry. Okay, so capital assets, again, we don't have a whole lot of movement in any project other than the wastewater treatment plant. So the changes there are gonna continue to be significant until the project is over. Otherwise, some small amount changes. The police department has ordered their vehicles, but they, are still out. They're having a hard time getting everything in on time. So that hopefully will end this year, but if not, it will roll into the next fiscal year.
Do you think that last year there was some fireworks
donations though, because we did receive several last year that they asked us to roll into this year. So that was around, I believe, 24,000 if you added all of those in. Yeah, because there were some from last year, and so they will not show up on here. And then the expenses, like I said, we should really only have the one major expense, and that's gonna be the firework expense, and I believe it was 16,500. We have not received that bill from them. Trying to find that expense line for you. I can find it and send it right to you on the expense side of it.
Well, I always thought, each year we get quite a bit of donations to cover, we still do.
Yeah, we actually did get quite a bit. We got more than I believe we anticipated in, because there were some extra ones that we wouldn't normally have gotten. We had the extra, I believe we got extra from, the grant, the Geneseo Foundation. And lastly is the treasurer's report. The general fund again is looking very good here. We did receive our ARPA funds, but they are not in the general fund. They actually have their own fund. And so on the next treasurer's report, you'll see that fund and the fund number. Any kind of revenues and expenses need to be separated. So the easiest thing to do is create a fund for it. Otherwise, I think everything is, on, like I said, on budget. I'm not concerned in any areas. But if you guys have any questions, I can try to answer them.
What a difference a year makes.
Well, here's the deal.
We don't get to do that, I'm sitting
I
here.
know. I'll make a motion to approve the budget book, capital assets, and treasurer's report.
Motion by Barnhart,
Second?
second by Arnold, roll call.
James? Yes.
Arnold? Yes.
Kenneth?
Yes.
Crowe?
Yes.
Barnhart?
Yes.
Wackel?
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. Next on the agenda, any unfinished business items requested to be removed from the consent agenda? None? Moving on to the consent agenda, Brandon.
12.1, approval of previous city council minutes, August 10th, 2021. Item 12.2, approval of previous committee of the whole minutes, August 24th, 2021.
I'll make a motion to approve using the omnibus method and approve items 12.1 through 12.3.
Second.
Motion by Barnhart, second by Arnold, roll call.
Crowe?
Yes.
Kenneth?
Yes.
Barnhart?
Yes.
Wackel?
Yes.
James?
Yes.
Arnold?
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. Item number 13 on the agenda, and your administration 13.1, consideration of ordinance O-21-10 pertaining to alcohol and public offenses.
So when we have a public activity like trains, planes, or street side market, we always block off the streets. And in the past, there's been areas that are like a beer garden, and it's a much smaller area, and it doesn't really incentivize people to go into our bars and restaurants during the event because they can't take their drinks back out unless they go and stay within that contained area. So we had a discussion of continuing what we have done through COVID, what's been allowed, which is that people can take their container from the bar and then they could go to wherever is our contained area. So they could leave GBC, Ray Lynn's, and stay within the blocked area and consume whatever they're drinking. And so I've talked to the police department, and I wanted to make sure that they were on board. So it's kind of, if you think about it, it's just a larger beer garden. The whole event area, which is contained, becomes an area that you could carry your cocktail or your beer and drink. And that's what this would do. This would allow people to go into Raylene, pick up a drink, go back out, and continue walking through the booths or whatever the event is, looking at the cars and so forth.
Provided that the cars and the booths are within the area of control.
Correct.
So this doesn't turn downtown into a beer garden 5 nights, 7
No.
nights a week or whatever. It's only during authorized festivities or events where we issued a permit that has this designated area of control. So it's only a minority of events. And when Joe talked to me about this, it's what's already been going on. You know, the police came to her and also talked to her about the fact that, well, technically, you know, there are some people who say that this shouldn't be permitted at all, even though we've got the area of control, or everybody's got a wristband on, we're doing all the things we need to do, but the ordinances hadn't kept up with the practice. Given that we're trying to encourage everybody to stay outside, stay distant, and as much as possible, this is just cleaning that up so that we don't have any heartburn over having the area of control and people being outside with their beverage.
It also allows some of the restaurants that aren't in the downtown area to set up a location, and they would have to get a special event liquor license because that's not their location. But like GRB then could also be part of that and not left out.
Yeah, and that was one of the struggles when we first started the Central Bank Pavilion area. And I would just add that I don't know how many members of the council have seen what have gone on during some of the events and entertainment that was at the pavilion. And Zach, feel free to chime in. But we really got the ball rolling in a good direction with bringing entertainment to Geneseo. Reasonable entertainment, good entertainment. And I would hate to see us digress in a manner and pull back from something that I feel is headed the right way. Would you agree, Zach, with what we're trying to do down there?
Yeah,
And all those businesses have seen an uptick. Every time we bring some sort of event to that location, sales go up, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, a lot of the bars and restaurants in the area are reporting an uptick in business, specifically the bars on the weekends, right, when we're having events at the pavilion.
Right.
It's busier than it was before COVID in 2019 for them. So this is exactly something we're trying to do, is to not only reignite the nightlife over at the pavilion, but then when you look at our events, it's not even worth it for some of our, because who sets up a beer garden at chamber events, for example, like State Street Market? We would have Raylands or Lehman's come down. Often it's not even worth the time and effort for them to come down and do that. But they were doing that to come down and get the crowd. Well, now if we have this, to Joe's point, you know, someone's not just, you know, in the confines of a beer garden, or they have to stay inside of that establishment and not get to enjoy that event, you know. So I think this is a good compromise and a good way to move forward with, you know, what a lot of towns are doing, but also what we've already seen work in Geneseo with the pavilion.
And that's exactly right. This is a means of compromise because, like you said, when you go to the car show, people don't go to the car show to hang out in a beer garden. But yet, a large majority of our public would like to go to an event like that and be able to walk the streets with a beer. And it's the compromise about still getting that crowd to come to those events, still allowing something in a contained manner, and allowing something that helps, you know, a large share of our downtown businesses are in the bar, restaurant, entertaining venue. And it's about continuing to try to work towards sustainability for them, to be comparable and competitive with the communities around you. That's the problem.
And you know, we were looking at like what Galena does and some of the other cities, and this is very common, and people really like it. And I think Casey could speak to the fact that we have not had any notable issues during the time that this has already been happening.
No, we've had I would say zero.
Yeah.
We had a great trial run with COVID, and I don't know, I don't see anything, or we haven't seen anything that would lead us to, you know, say otherwise or be not for it. We've got a great community here, and everybody seems to get along and have fun in appropriate ways. Good thing.
Yeah, there's also a means of, a mechanism here for the enforcement of the violation of said ordinance, because I'm just putting myself back into the shoes of being a patrolman. If, let's say we were to go against this, and that's fine, whatever decision the council makers will stand, but I know these patrol officers, if there still continues to be a car show and sees somebody on the street with a beer, they're not gonna issue a citation. I mean, somebody would have to be belligerent, out of control, and totally disrespectful. We always exercise on the side of due regard and trying to get compliance by other means, correct, Chief?
Correct.
However, if you know, as a community, when you established well-established bounds, and you have people extending those perimeters at that point, you know, now they're playing outside of the rules that we were established. Yes, the rules are established that you can't have alcohol at these events, but it's a difficult place to be in as a patrol officer, to try to represent your community and do the justice to the community, but, you know, also balance the treatment of what's expected in a small town. So I think this just helps solidify what the expectations are of our downtown, our public events, and the events that, you know, this would pertain to.
So this goes with the parks too, like they have you're saying the farmer's market too, or whatever, or what were you?
I refer to State Street Market, which is downtown Geneseo.
So it would just be downtown, right? That's all we're talking about?
Yes.
Unless we permit something else, and, you know, I mean, nothing's automatic.
Correct.
Everything is a specifically.
No, but my concern is like, if they do something at the park during like the October, the scarecrow thing,
Well,
I mean, you gotta balance it between what a family event is and
But there would have to-
with alcohol brought in and all that. And,
There would also have to be an established designated perimeter, which is.
yeah, but you can say the park.
Well, you
that's-
could, but
that's
we
not a-
control it.
Right, that's.
Nobody has a right to this.
No, I understand. I just wanna know what the parameters are ahead of time, you know what I'm saying? I don't, because,
Wherever it is blockaded, wherever the controlled area is,
Established
Yeah.
perimeter.
right, that we allow for it.
I think park would be tough, if it's open.
Yeah.
I don't see us doing this at Scarecrow.
no, that's fine. I just wanna make sure because it's a public event, you know what I mean?
But we don't block streets off for
Yeah, and
Scarecrow.
But it hasn't grown yet, you don't know. This is just the beginning.
But the intent of the ordinance is not all of a sudden any public event. Street closures, perimeter established, designated events, not just because I'm in a public venue at a public event now, do whatever you wanna do, that's.
I just wanna make sure, I understand what we're talking about here, that's all.
Well, and I guess just, so I'm understanding this clearly, then. So we have the, Central Bank Pavilion, and that was to provide an outdoor performing area, what have you. That's, clearly enclosing and easily designated. I understand technically planes, trains, and automobiles is blocked off, loosely defined. I mean, we have barricades on the street and what have you, but it's blocked off as much as the farmer's market is every Saturday morning. Our block off rural. I guess I'm not, it seems to be maybe a bit of we're drawing not a great distinction, when it's a community event and we're gonna kind of have to mince words on, well, what's, properly blocked off, what isn't, but I guess
That's not what controls it.
No.
It's the permit that controls it.
Exactly.
I understand.
You tell the world, this is the defined area in which you can have a beer, and then outside that, you're walking around with a beer, the police are gonna scoot you back in, or you're gonna get a ticket.
Right.
The person who served it to you is also still on the hook.
But what's the difference between planes, trains, and automobiles and Victoria Christmas Walk, or between Farmers Market, or between any
Because
event?
you've gotta have the fences, the barricades, or the bike racks, whatever you call them, that define the area.
A designated
Defined
event.
and in the permit.
So would this be eligible to Christmas walk then?
Right. Well, it doesn't make every, I think there's some confusion that every
I know,
event.
there's a lot of confusion.
No,
I'm
who's
asking.
applying for it?
Yeah, exactly. Who's applying for it? Just because it's a public event doesn't mean every public event automatically qualifies.
Is the chamber gonna apply for Christmas walk?
Well, yeah, we would definitely do it for Christmas
But
walk.
then
That's what I'm saying, you're blocking it off for the parade, so why
No,
wouldn't you?
but then there would be the.
It's not enough to block it off,
Right.
it's all of it.
Okay.
You have to have a sponsor
Yeah.
who's taken out all the insurance, got the permit for it, it's a defined area within
Designated
the event.
defined area.
It's not the whole event, it's a defined area within an event, in the permit.
Could you
So-
define-
so
I understand
For
what you're
Christmas walk, there will be a dry part of Christmas walk, and there'll be a part where you can walk between the restaurants in a defined area. And two areas. So your kids don't have to go into the area where alcohol is allowed. In fact, they probably shouldn't be in there, if, depending on what the
Well,
event
that
is.
makes it a lot harder out there, because now you just said that kids can't go into the car.
No, they can.
Right.
They
No, no, no,
walk through, but
no.
it depends on the event. If you're,
It depends on the event and what your tone and tenor of that event is, or thereby helps establish the criteria you establish.
Okay, but if you establish in a enclosed event and you permit carrying around, how do we know whether they purchased it there or brought it in?
well, if you're got alcohol open inside the defined area, you have to have a wristband on. And at
Okay.
that point,
I
if you
didn't know that.
smuggle, what?
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and if you smuggled in a can of beer, well, good for you, but you've got a wristband, you're properly identified.
I don't think that wristband's in the ordinance. I read it, I don't remember
But that
seeing
would
it.
be part of how we would execute
Well,
the,
I'm just saying that we have to be really pedantic to say these are things that are gonna happen.
No.
If they're not written down,
You
there's no
don't,
rules
because
about
then
it.
you're gonna destroy the creativity of the chamber trying to come up.
Well, but you
with
just
that.
said that you have to have a wristband. If that's not in the ordinance, then that, you don't have to have a wristband.
I would just like to know, I'm not trying to create the, or destroy the creativity of the chamber, I just try not to open Pandora's box.
Because the person who sells the alcohol is on the
To
hook.
do it, correct.
They have to control who they give it to, and the wristband was intended to say for the event sponsor,
And-
it makes it easier for us. Otherwise, without wristbands, they have to card every single transaction.
And that's
that
been-
slows it down, and that's contrary to what you're trying to do, which was create an event that invites people downtown to make it as easy as possible. If the sponsor doesn't want to do wristbands, you don't, you just slow it down so that everybody has to get
Then
a
don't
card.
say wristbands are required, because it's not.
No, this is in practice how it's worked. We're tilting at false
That's-
narratives.
that's how we
That's my
handle it.
issue.
Correct.
You're
That's-
tilting at something that's not a problem. We're trying to solve a problem for the police for something that's worked successfully for you. We just want to take the police out of harm's way and saying, this is a technical violation, why aren't you enforcing it? Well, because it's nobody's intent and everybody's controlled, and there's been no problem with respect to the liquor code or minors having it or misleading to any of that. So we were trying to correct something to help the sponsors and everybody else understand what their obligations and responsibilities were, which is to define an area if they want to allow this to happen. But if you want to shut it down, then we'll just take it out. I mean, if you don't want to stop
My only point is, I'm in IT, if you say, hey, don't worry, we got it covered, we're gonna do backups, but we really don't do backups, that's just a theory. If you say that, if you can't make a statement as an attorney
Yeah, but
that
you're
says,
ignoring
we're
the
gonna
liquor
require wristbands, and then say, but it's not really required, it's up to them.
Yes, but
Just
you're
don't make that
ignoring
statement.
the liquor code. The liquor code applies to every sale, regardless, and every
Well,
possession.
I was gonna ask, do we allow people to carry on glass beverages? Can you carry on bottles? Can you carry around, again, there's nothing written down that says that.
It is, actually. It's in the liquor code, and it's in our ordinances. You can't take a glass thing out of the door of the facility. Only plastic can go out the door. And then the question is, can you take it out the door and walk across the street or to see the car? This is what's helping clean that up. That's already in our code.
Where? We already said that our ordinances aren't kept up with our practices. Does our ordinance say that you're allowed to carry alcohol out in the public? No. Our
Yes.
ordinance don't specify that there. So we need to put in an ordinance, if we don't allow glass, we gotta put an ordinance that it's only plastic if we require.
Well, I think that the idea was,
I don't mean, I'm not against this, I'm just saying, let's not throw statements out that says we're gonna have to do this if they're not really required, that's all I'm saying.
but see, they're required by liquor code, and so many of these things have already been in place this entire time with the events at the Central Bank Pavilion, with the plastic, with the wristbands by those that are taking out the liquor license, because they're covered by liquor code. And I think the intent is to not be redundant, and especially produce our attorney to do redundant work when something's already covered. Maybe perhaps reference the
I must have
we
missed it in
could
my
reference the liquor code, I guess, to satisfy.
I didn't see any
some of these
references.
Well,
requirements.
it's part of it. This is a section.
So,
But I trust your judgment, I'm just saying that, when I read it, I didn't see any references.
but
to
I
this.
really do wanna go back to, there's an element, a large element of this aids our law enforcement with knowing what they are supposed to do, what the triggers are, and what the actions are. Because they don't have those now. And I'm telling you right now, from having done it for 20 years, if we have events and somebody's got a beer, it's gonna be deal with that individual, and they're gonna deal with it with grace and diligence like they all do, because they carry themselves in high regard, but they're gonna do so.
So here, well, actually, so let's go back. In 11037, paragraph B, the location and area set aside for the sale of alcohol under a Class F special events or Class H special license must be bounded on all sides by fencing, with only one entrance and exit is approved by the liquor commissioner. Anyone seeking entrance to that area must
that's an extension of their property and their enclosure.
That's on their license.
Exactly.
That's different than this.
Maybe I'm missing this, but, so planes, let's say we had this, and we just had planes, trains, and automobiles. So, but the intent of this is that you could go out and walk amongst the cars and have a beer, basically.
correct.
Now,
And
but-
we
But
did
planes,
do that.
trains, and automobiles isn't fenced off, it doesn't have
Yes,
a
it is.
controlled entrance. No, it's not.
Yeah.
It has some barricades
It's a-
up, but it's not,
it
it's not, the entrances are controlled.
So,
For cars they are, but not pedestrians.
Casey's looking at something else, but yeah, the streets are barricaded. You can't,
But that's,
so I,
yeah, can you walk
Uncontrolled
around
access.
a barricade? Sure you can. But if you walk around the barricade and you have liquor in your hand, then the police could say, no, you can't just walk down Oakwood with a beer. You need to go back to the controlled space. And there were streets that were cordoned off. I can't tell you, maybe Zach knows exactly which ones. Chad's not here to,
oh no, I hope so,
But-
barricades, I know which ones, but I'm telling you that that is a different, that is not how we have the central bank pavilion control. There is a fence, or when we've done in the park, when we've had beer gardens, there is a fence and what have you, there's one entry and exit point.
and
There is not one entry and exit point, there are a half dozen entry
I agree.
points.
And what we hope to do in the future, because right now we're having to make do with what we've got, which is barricades. But what we're hoping to do in the future is to, part of our capital planning is to have those accordion gates that are mechanical, that we can close them. They will be, and then we could have one, but I would suggest 2 or 3 entrances and exits, just if you have an emergency, you don't want everybody trying to get out one entrance.
So you're thinking you're gonna actually barricade off planes, trains, and automobiles, so you can only come in a couple of entrances for the whole thing?
no. These would be things that could be used in times of emergency.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
These are things that could be used in times of benign street closures for State Street. These would be things that we
Oh,
could
yeah.
install one time at all and not pay labor and expense for people to go out and pick up barricades like it's 1950 stuff.
And what if we got to the point where, Friday night after 6 o'clock, when businesses aren't open except for bars and restaurants, and Saturday night, that we close these fences and this small area where we have our bars and restaurants becomes pedestrian only? I mean, how cool could that be? And they could move tables out into the street.
And that could be a good thing, but I guess I'm just, you're basically taking the entire planes, trains, and automobiles event and making it a beer garden essentially.
Only the downtown portion.
Well, where the cars are, I guess.
Which we did, and the one thing I'd really like everybody to think about is this has been going on for over a year because it has been allowed through COVID, and we've had no issues whatsoever.
Okay, I guess,
So
I
honestly
understand, but,
I did not get allowed to carry around planes. I saw people carrying beers around.
Yeah,
Oh my gosh, you guys are breaking the law.
right, and I'm not so sure that, and being involved in that event from multiple angles, I'm not so sure that this, that from car owners to families that come to this and what have you, that we're necessarily doing something that would enhance the event.
I think Zach could speak to the
The
businesses.
exact opposite is true. Most car shows, people are illegally walking around with coolers. So, I mean, this was, what I witnessed in Geneseo going on Saturday was very tame compared to what a majority of car shows look like.
Well, because we don't allow it is why it was, I would hope it'd be tame,
We
because
have
they'd be
to.
doing something
But the
illegal.
other communities aren't allowing it either, is what I'm saying, and that's where it becomes a difficult situation for your police department at that point, because now you have all kinds of people coming to your community violating the law, and what do you want to be seen as a community policing? That everybody comes to our community and violates the law, we're gonna throw the hammer at it. That's an awful place for to ask a law
I
enforcement officer to be.
understand that, but I don't know then if we diminish the law to accommodate something. If everyone's driving 40 down North Street
But you're
Do we
not
make
gonna,
the speed limit 40, or do we enforce the
we're
20?
not diminishing the law, we're actually creating an ordinance that
Well,
regulates.
your argument that says we should do it because everybody else is doing it.
No, that's not my argument one
That
bit.
is. You said
Absolutely
you
not.
said- You made a statement that people who come to our town who don't know our ordinances, it puts our police in a bad situation because now we have to tell them you're not allowed to drink here even though other towns do. I
But
think that's a bad argument. I'm with you, John.
My argument isn't that because I didn't say because other towns do, because other towns don't say drink, but they do it anyways, is what I'm saying.
Well, if you don't want outside alcohol, you need to rescind the F and H's.
To be honest,
No more special events.
I'm in favor of this, folks. It's just, I did not know, I'm a council member, I did not know that I could have carried a beer around playing Trace Omnibus. I had no clue that I could do that.
You would, if you read, and trust me, I totally understand all of the COVID information that we've received, right? I'm bombarded 100 times more than you, but it was in there.
Sure.
And it talked about alcohol and establishments and trying to help these establishments stay open. I think it's important to get Zach's perspective from the businesses, how they felt being able to do this during planes, trains, because I was asked no less than 3 times from different businesses, and Zach, we can do this, right? We can do this, because it was very important to them and to their business.
And so just to be clear, let me finish. I'm in favor of this. My only thing that I hope people hear me arguing for this is please, let's make sure the rules are clear and not, you have to go reference 18 different places. To
No,
understand
I
the
agree
rules.
100%
It's
with
got to be clearly spelled in the ordinance. You have to have a wristband. You got it. That's all I'm asking for.
And that's already in our licenses that we issue for F and H, which are special
And
events.
that's my only argument at all, is just please let's just be clear what we require so that there's no ambiguity walking around and is that person allowed or not, and that's all I'm asking.
You know, I just wanna go on record as mayor and as chairing this administration with Joe and trying to work with partners like the chamber. I am doing everything I can within my power to bring forward common sense goals, common sense rules that put us competitive with surrounding towns. And I don't mean surrounding towns that are the wild, wild west. I mean surrounding towns that live in modern times and wanna do things to support their local business. And we are not competitive, folks. Plain and simple. And I know some people don't like that. And I know some people think it upsets this pristine image of Geneseo. I've lived here my whole life, and I'm now the mayor of this community, and I'm darn proud to be so, okay? I'm not gonna do anything to tarnish that image. But I'm gonna do everything I can to try to help these downtown businesses. And they talk to me. I hear them all the time. Can't be competitive around, can't be competitive around. We finally got a decent ball rolling with something like the Central Bank Pavilion. And Central's not here to speak for themselves, and Zach, you'll share this. They like what's happened so much, they want to invest in this community and want us to help invest in this community to make that a better venue down there. So we're so hung up on the fear of somebody walking around with a beer, and I don't diminish anybody's feelings, because it's America, and like Pastor Steve said, it makes us all unique to have different points of view. But we are not being competitive anymore. And if that's what we want to do, then we have to be prepared as a council to accept what comes with that. And that's going to be people that aren't going to want to invest in a business downtown that serves food or alcohol. Because why would you want to invest in a town of Geneseo to bring a new bar or something, a storefront downtown, when you can go to another town that's going to court you with open arms on the way they do things? So, I mean, I'm just saying, for the public's sake, I've got the back of the downtown businesses.
I've only got one question, and just not an argument question. We're talking about buying the alcohol from businesses too.
Correct, license holders.
So we're not talking guys, how do we keep guys from bringing coolers in? I guess maybe what.
It's a problem. I've worked plenty of car shows in my career. That can be a problem, but that's a different method of enforcement outside this, and that goes to a lot of what Mark was saying is referenced in the liquor the liquor code pertaining to what is expected of the licensed holder for that event. So there are concerns. I'm not gonna be blind and say there's not, but we have to put the tools that we can put in place to help enforce and separate those concerns. So the chief knows, or his staff knows, when I got a guy with a cooler of beer and cans of beer, different than a person that has a wristband on that bought a beer from a licensed holder in a plastic cup. It makes it clearer.
That was not an argument.
We should.
I didn't want to try to sound like I was arguing back, so I apologize.
And so the way the permits are issued is, the already required wristband, so if they weren't doing that, well, we'll just have to get better at it. And likewise with the plastic cups, if you've got a can
license
So
holder.
in terms of being in the controlled area, you should only see people with a plastic cup. And not a bottle, not a plastic bottle, just a plastic cup with whatever the beverage or cocktail is in it. If you see a can, that's either a cooler person or somebody who screwed up and sold it to them as a can, because the can, nothing's supposed to leave the premises. So, and that's all kind of in the code and then also in the permits. And if we need to do a better job of defining the area for things, big events, then we should do it. Like the Christmas walk, there'll have to be a demarcation. It's not the whole walk, I presume. It's gonna be a line of demarcation where, here's where alcohol can be and here's where it can't.
I mean, specifically, this is geared towards trying, yes, we've opened it up to events per se, but I think the intent, the largest intent was try to keep the ball rolling with what we have going on in that quadrant of town up north, around the pavilion, where a majority, where, three of the main bars and restaurants are. And with regards to the gates and stuff, yeah, that may have been shocking for some of you to hear, but that would be our first target area, because it would easily, within the course of about 3 polls at 3 gates, shut that area down into a designated area, that now you're controlled by a couple of access points of sidewalks. It would make Chief's job a lot easier on how many people he has to post and where. So, I mean, they're like fragmented spokes in the wheel, I get it, but I would just encourage that we really are, as administration, trying to think and pull this together, working with the chamber and the chief, and et cetera.
My opinion is I think you should get that on paper, just get it tightened up, so we can vote on it and have an ordinance that's in place, so we know what the rules are.
I think this, sir?
We had, that's kind of my point, Michael, is we already have these rules on the books. They're not in this section that we're amending, but they're in 110 and 130. And so these rules exist in your code of ordinances now.
Yeah. And this ordinance amends the one section that applies to, open container on the street, and allows to have open container on the street in the designated area under the certain rules.
So the way it reads right now, without this amendment, is the chamber can come in and ask for an F license, and it's defined, okay? And so they can say, it's Main Street, here to here, this is our defined area. The liquor commissioner can approve that today. That's on the books today. That's what they can do. Central Bank is one example of it. Plain Transit is another. The difference is that the premises says all this and includes a sidewalk and a street. The permit says that's allowed. This section we're amending says it's not allowed. So which is it? And under COVID, the governor suspended a whole bunch of rules, like the ability to take out mixed cocktails, and the ability to, all those things were suspended to help the tourism industry, the bar and restaurant industry survive. Right? And so those were continued, the ability to be flexible and do all that. So today, you have festivals where technically people are in violation of the law for a festival nobody has a complaint about. The Central Bank Pavilion, nobody's had a concern. I haven't heard a single concern about that, and yet people are technically in violation of the law. We are correcting that technical violation. That's all this ordinance does, is to say, if you've got that special event license, F or H, then you can be on the street or on a sidewalk, technically, with them.
Well, I just think of planes, trains, and all, there's not to pick on them, but how can you ever say that you got one entrance and one exit, or you're barricading off the control of that? I don't see how you can say that.
It's in the enforcement.
Yeah, Casey, do you think during planes, trains, and automobiles that there was a difficulty identifying which area was cordoned off, where people were allowed to drink and whether they were not allowed to drink?
No, I don't, but also, we have a great asset right here that would be able to help us out with that and define those boundaries when it comes to, hey, this is this event, it stops right here, stops right here, stops right here, stops right here.
So on our books already, a plan, and so the sponsor, it can't just happen organically. There has to be a sponsor. Typically, it'll be the chamber. If we want more rigor, more detail in the plan that they're required to submit now, they're required to submit a plan to the liquor commissioner to get the F
my understanding of things because of my day-to-day involvement versus your guys, and I apologize. But Chief, when we started with the Central Bank Pavilion, what did we turn the plan into? What did Gene create? I mean, no, seriously, how many pages?
It's an ops plan.
Yeah,
An
how many
operational plan
pages?
for the entire event, and,
But,
we're,
I mean, I'm not exaggerating when I'm talking.
it's a binder.
It's
It's a
book.
binder.
I mean, that entails everything from first aid areas, designated first aid area, I mean, so I mean.
Where does a lost child go? It's, Gene.
I only offer that as evidence of the dedication of this administration to get it right and get it right the first time. And actually, they took something that was written on 2 or 3 pages of paper, and now it's on 20, 30?
At least.
At least. And in fact, when we met with Zach, I believe you were there, some of these central bank folks planning some of these events, I mean, they were joking, obviously, at the extent of what we were requesting for information for planning of the event.
Our emergency vehicles getting in and out. I mean, Gene thought of everything. This is planned like the Boston Marathon.
So I only offer that to show the due diligence that we are doing, and we're doing it to try to find that blend, that marriage between what's expected by the citizens of Geneseo and what the city of Geneseo is, and trying to be competitive in today's world with what a social event looks like nowadays.
I know for me personally, you know, and I'm not so hung up on saying that you have to have a fenced area. I guess I was asking questions about, well, currently the beer garden is fenced. So when we say control, does that mean we have to literally fence off everything? You know, from my point of view, I'm just saying my personal self, I'm fine with barricade, and maybe it'd just be nice to have a little sign that says, this is the end of the
No alcohol passes.
no alcohol passes away.
And
You know, and that's, to me, I'm not saying we have to have.
Sure, and the only thing I would offer, and I think you got a point, Brett, and Chief, you would agree, I mean, I think we're spending too much time on exactly what a perimeter is. I mean, because there's so many perimeters in life. It could be a fence, it could be a perimeter of people, albeit a police officer or some type of other designee. I mean, we established traffic control anymore for the Father's Day parade, and by utilizing every city staff there is, volunteers from all departments. They have no enforcement mechanism. However, we have designated them to establish a perimeter at an intersection. So, I mean, I guess if fences and turning something into a poundment would make some feel better, I would only offer that there's many ways to establish perimeters in today's world.
Well, you have to approve them as legal commission, so.
Right, I think that's what I'm saying, but I mean, somebody could offer a plan that might not have a strategic fence that you could go, wow, this is solidly controlled, it's controlled via these means.
I think that, you know, just again, talking about my own experiences, previously the beer gardens here, you could only get into the beer garden by going through the bar. I mean, it was so controlled that when we say, hey, we're gonna take that beer garden idea and just make it a lot bigger, then it's like, well, how does that work? Because it wasn't, you could just walk in on the beer garden, you had to walk in through a very controlled access. But this is not necessary, and so I think you're absolutely right, Mayor, is what is the definition of a controlled area? Is it just a barricade type thing that says, hey, this is the edge? I mean, could we offer this at the 4th of July?
It's whatever we say it is.
It's whatever we say it is, and I think that definition is great.
You know, and I think the comfort in you know, ultimately, because Dirk will tell you, I mean, I have a lot of writing on this as liquor commissioner, so, you know, the intent needs to be that we feel as a community, we are comfortable with the controls established and how they're controlled. And as long as that burden is being met, you know, to me, it seems a bit trivial, and again, I'm not disruptive. I think to be hung up on whether it's a fence, or is it a 3-foot fence, or 4-foot, or is it a snow fence, or whatever, I think we need to have the right people in the right place making the right decisions about what the right controls for this community are. And I'm comfortable with that, and I would hope that you all are with the decisions we've made so far.
I would say that the intent here was exactly what you're describing, which was you had to get through a control to be in the beer garden, but now instead of going through into the back, we were gonna have a common place like that in the front where the event could be happening and people could be milling about, but it was still a matter of control. So the sales are only from license holders who are responsible to not overserve, check ID, and it had to be in a plastic thing. And so that was the idea, was to still have a controlled, you know, Joe's used the word beer garden, to have a common beer garden around the event where instead of going to the back and staying only within a premises, we'd have an area of control. So that was the goal. And that's why we built in, well, what that will look like in a particular event, it'll look different all of these controls submitted to the Liquor Commissioner to get your special event license. And, you know, as the mayor just said, got a lot of writing as Liquor Commissioner on making sure we do that the right way.
Maybe no, things like the food ban, and that this is restrictions on it, a piece of paper, just depends on that.
Yeah, that's all required in 11037.
And I appreciate you looking that up.
Yeah.
I read the ordinance, I didn't go read all the.
Well, I will say that it hopscotches around.
Yeah, and that's why I reference, you know, we're caught up in so much of the conversation that happens beforehand, sometimes it's easy to realize the details that y'all are left out on, so.
So, yeah, thank you. If I could, we've talked about this internally at the chamber and how we would invest in signage for the barricades of the perimeters events that clearly say no alcohol allowed beyond this point. So that's one thing. It's going to be very large, visible signage. So that's something we're willing to invest in to help out with that. The next point I wanted to make was that, you know, in working with the Geneseo Police Department and these ops plans, I mean, they're very impressive. They're covering so many bases. Clear due diligence that we're doing working together. And we're doing the hard work this year, so now in future years, we can just tinker with it a little bit to make any adjustments. But among the things that are featured in these ops plans is a satellite map that has clearly marked where all of the perimeters are, where all the barricades or gates or whatever may happen in the future, where those are at. And we also outline the times of the event, so that way the police has that information so that they can do that. Another thing is about some of our events, specifically at the park. You know, we're not going to have alcohol at Scarecrow Row, and we've gotten rid of alcohol at Music Fest. We've already done that, because there used to be a big beer garden with a Budweiser tent in front of the Queen pageant, and that looked tacky. And trust me, I'm all about beer gardens, okay? I'm cool with that. But this is not the event for that, and we're cognizant of that at the chamber. So it's not because this ordinance were to pass that this is going to happen all over. Now, when we're downtown and if we have a parade going on and someone wants to step outside of Barney's onto the step or sidewalk and watch with a beer that's in a plastic cup, there's no harm, no foul there. And plus, Atkinson Heritage Days is a lot of fun. You can do that down there. So I'm just kind of sharing my experiences. You know, I've had a lot of fun there. Frankly, I probably make more ruckus sober than any problems that are going to come to this of our with our ordinance. So. You know, I'm feeling pretty good about this ordinance. You know, I think it'd be something that'd be helpful to our businesses, and that's something the chamber's all about. Would it enhance our events? I don't think it's going to hurt it. I don't think it's going to necessarily attract people, nor are we going to say, hey, all of a sudden you can have alcohol at our events. We're not going to blast that on social media. It's just going to be something that people come to discover, and I think people will do it responsibly, because that's exactly what has happened so far with the Central Bank Pavilion and these ordinances during COVID with the relaxed rules at our events. It can be done, and I think it's been done well to this point.
Here's the bad news. That high standard you just set for Central Bank is exactly what you've got to set for planes, trains in the future and for Christmas balls.
We're willing to do that.
Yeah.
You know.
No, and then that's the same standard for everybody who would come your way. It's well done, but apparently it wasn't as well done for planes, trains. That's the standard.
Yeah, and I mean, we'll work with this, you know, as far as setting up the parameters and seeing what can happen. But, you know, when you have a large event, and even to the point, you know, what if someone can sneak in alcohol? I mean, that happens at bars. I mean, I was 21 once, right? And so that's something that they have to worry about. But we're going to do our due diligence as a chamber to provide high quality events, and we're going to be tactful about how we do this. You know, we're not just going to say it's a free for all. This is, you know, some kind of Summerfest, you know, Oktoberfest. Well, that might be a good event. Our next event, Oktoberfest. But my point is that I believe that this can be tastefully done, and to this point, we've been doing a good job. And then moving forward, you know, I don't think that this is going to hurt the quality of our events. I don't think it's going to necessarily add extra people to the events, you know, to be fair. But this is, I think, a step to move forward, and I know that there's a comparison about because other communities are doing that. I am willing to embrace that position. You know, we compete against other communities, and I reference Atkinson Heritage Days because they allow this at their event, and it's a fun event. So I think we can tap into that here in Geneseo. And I do believe that based on the experiences we've seen over the past, well, ever since the pavilion was established, that we can do this. But just because we do this and this ordinance passes doesn't mean the chamber is going to be doing this at every one of our events. You know, we know what our family events are, and anything at the park, we're probably not going to pursue having alcohol at those events.
I think Zach hit on what I'm concerned about down deep, and that's the people who
would just encourage that, you know, we build the right mechanisms, and we do what's right for our community, and we put the right controls and steps in place based on experience, and now we have a year's worth of experience, I think is so much of what Dirk is used as the foundation here. But I just, for the sake of, you know, the business community as a whole and trying to work toward what resembles what we're competing against, I just would encourage that let's not be so fearful of what could happen. I mean, so much of what we do in government is regulate things that do happen. And you don't want to turn a blind eye and allow things to happen. But I would hate to see us embrace fear so bad out of what could happen that we don't even, you know, give the ball that's rolling a chance to continue. Would just be my closure.
I'll make a motion to approve the ordinance 02110, amending our outlaw code of public offenses.
Motion by Arnold.
You know, I would think just one more quick comment too, is that if we do make it known that there are rules and regulations, it would be better for the policeman to control.
That's what I started off with, Bob.
I mean, that's.
I'm glad you're seeing it now, yes.
Well, I think I do.
I'll second.
Okay, motion by Arnold, second by Barnhart, roll call.
Arnold?
Yes.
James?
Yes.
Wachtel?
Yes.
Barnhart?
Yes.
Crowe?
Yes.
Kenneth?
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. Moving on, item 13.2, new business open discussion. Joe, I'll let you take it from there.
Sure. So there wasn't a lot for this agenda. I didn't expect the last item to go that long, so I thought maybe we could discuss some things that we kind of have like a cow meeting, things that have come up over the last few months are signage. Everybody knows that we're doing the 3 new signs in the same locations that they are now. And we've got a picture of that. That would be, Jimmy, if you can click on sign, Geneseo, welcome, correct colors. Okay, so if you look to the right, or can you scroll up, Jim? There you go. So it will have dry stacked stone with a stone cap. It's a hunter green sign with the arch, so the arch is matching what we have for the historic district. And then it has our tagline, where the future grows. So that would be our sign, our standard sign for those 3 locations. Then there's been conversations about signage to drive people into the city, whether we do signage at the exit, do we do a billboard, and a lot of the stuff that I've attached are just ideas. It's just giving information. So if we could go maybe back to, we can do a, Jamie, can you do LED sign boards? There, okay. So this could be something that we could do, like maybe if we check with IDOT in front of Casey's, or possibly even a better spot that Keith brought to my attention is kind of where you turn to go up to Richmond Hill, right there. We could have something, it would look like the other one, you know, in design, but we could have a digital sign there. A digital sign like this is probably going to cost about $40,000 to $60,000, just depending on all of the features. But we could advertise on this sign for all of our events, our meetings. I would hesitate advertising for businesses and collecting revenue, just because I've been through that in my previous city and it didn't really work. The other sign that I looked at would be a large billboard at the highway. So where it would be placed would be at Richmond Hill, at the very back of Richmond Hill, where it's past the turnaround, but you could see it from the highway. And we have the quote, it's $245,000. That's just one just one quote. We would go out for RFP for this, but that would be,
Ideas only.
yeah, this is just
It provides
ideas.
perspective on what the cost could be, and I think that's the important thing for the public to understand, is that these are not proposed expenditures. But to have any type of pertinent discussion as a council, we have to know what parameters we are working within. So both with this agenda item and any going forward, I would just urge restraint with forming assumptions that we're gonna make foolish high dollar expenditures, but we need this type of data to entertain a real discussion about what things may or may not cost.
I think Don Beck's point was well made. At this point, think big and let's work towards it.
And he does have a point. I mean, anybody with any history with Geneseo knows there is great community spirit, you know, and that we never know what is the trigger to that community spirit. You know, there's no reason to shy away from thinking big in the event that signage was something the community wanted to rally around. Now, whether or not they do, I do not know when it comes to supporting funds and things of that nature, but.
There's also at that location, so back in 2014, so at the location where the bridge is, where you would turn to go up Richmond Hill, so behind the chiropractor office and GRV, there was a footbridge designed at one time. And if you, yep, that one, Jamie. Oh, can you rotate that? I don't know, maybe.
I don't know about that.
Right there, to the left. To the left.
Then do a shift, right arrow.
Right there.
Keep going.
Keep going. Oh, yeah.
Okay, so that was the far left. There's a concept of a footbridge, which would then allow people pushing strollers, bicyclists, people walking to not have to go on the bridge where the cars travel. So you could then get to that shopping center, which includes, Dairy Queen, Culver's, all of that. And we could have this footbridge, you go over it, once you get over it, we would have our digital sign. So you would see it driving into town, the digital sign. I can tell you the digital sign that we put in my previous city, we hesitated, it was $60,000. It was so well received and people loved it. Just for any event coming up, and we wouldn't advertise, I don't want to pick on a church or anything, but quilt social. That it's not that kind of stuff. It's big like planes, trains, those type of things. But we could, if you wanted, we could advertise for businesses. But like I said, that gets complicated, and I would like to steer you away from that.
I think George's got something to say about the matter.
No way. Yeah, because there are words. The Supreme Court of the United States has said that commercial speech is now on a level with political speech. It's equally protected. There used to be levels of protection. In fact, way back when I was in law school at Phil Penn's, there were different levels of protection for commercial speech, but not anymore. It's equal to political speech, which means as soon as you say this space available for rent, you cannot discriminate on content even among advertisers anymore. That you have to take all comers willing to pay the freight for whatever their message is. And that, I don't live here, but that does seem like a Geneseo.
Very slippery.
And that's exactly what I ran into before. And it was a tattoo place, which isn't that horrible, but still.
Typically it was head shops,
Right,
way
right.
back before cannabis was,
Right.
$100 million driver of tax revenue for the state of Illinois. That used to be the poster child for that stuff. So
And you can start,
I would limit your signage to
Right.
your message. It's called the government speech exception. When you speak as a governmental body, nobody gets to come and say, well, you gotta let me in now. That's the difference. But it's the government speech exception for controlling the public forum.
idea, I mean, imagine cemetery cleanup and what a problem that was. If we had something like that flashing, hey, cemetery cleanup starts on this day. Brush pickup, trash is delayed by 1 day due to the holiday. And these are done from a computer, so they come a long way. So anyway, it's just, 13.2 just talks about, you know, do we want to talk about some of this stuff? I would like for us not to talk about streets, sidewalks, and ARPA or downtown improvements tonight, because Chad can't be here. When I made this up, I thought he was going to be here, but he would be an integral part of that conversation, so.
But I think on that note, to expand on the intent, this is conversations that, you know, Joe and I have had. I feel like there's a need for what I would call like social and communal, like reinvestment or infrastructure investments that sometimes may be, I don't want to say missed, because that would imply they're not doing their job, but not be at the focal of what a department head like Public Works may do. They're very structure oriented and on you know, mission driven, fix this street, fix this spot, that type of thing. But I think a community like Geneseo expects a certain amount of periodic social reinvestment on things that are both, you know, somewhat infrastructure related, albeit pedestrian bridges or sidewalks or what have you. But I think some of those need to come in some decision making and direction from the council. So the purpose of this new business discussion was to kind of spearhead a little bit of this, start to think about some things that we might want to look at and budget for going forward.
Yeah, and if we think we want to maybe move forward with a digital sign, not the billboard sign, but the smaller sign, then, or signs, you know, I could get some pricing on that, and then we could put it as part of our capital plan, and depending on where it's located, it's possible it could be paid out of tip. I don't know, Jamie left, but it just depends on where it goes. I know that strip mall is in its own tip. I don't know how much money's in that tip, but if that's the Bester tip, there's 16,000.
That's not Buster's.
Pardon?
That's not Buster's. I don't think that's Buster.
Which one is it, Rick? Route 82, Route 6?
It's Route 82, Jeff.
82.
It'd be
Route
the
82? Okay, that has 120,000.
If that lot's in it. I'm not.
Yeah, if that spot's in it. If it's contiguous to the TIF can pay for it also. So if it's like the next lot away from the TIF, could.
I know, I'm so in favor of this, and Zach, I meant to tell you, I love living on Main Street, because like on Saturday morning, it's a car parade. It's still amazing the number of cars that turn right on South, on State Street. So I would really encourage, we need to have signs like at State and Main, because you'd see an old car turn right, going away from downtown, and then a few minutes later coming back in, because they didn't know where to go to get to the car show. So something, I'm just so in favor. I miss that sign there right at State and Main that, you know, I mentioned before that they used to put up all the events. We ought to do something like this. It'd be huge.
Yeah, and you know, like the pedestrian bridge that Keith revived and brought back to us from 2014, I believe it was, or whatever. You know, that's an investment to the community that's you know, both convenience and safety, and you know, there's a litany of things that could be resolved with the council deciding that that's something we want to you know, attack and for these reasons and in this manner. So.
And very possible grants.
Yeah.
For that too. I just had something come across my desk today. Geneseo's been allocated 23,000 for which plan is it? Highway relief something. But we've got 23,000 if we can submit a plan. So, and then there's others. I do know as far as like our ARPA funds, I have that listed here, and under our ARPA funds, Chad has a whole program for that, for a very large project that we have been engineering for quite some time which is State Street from Ogden to Brown Street.
Right.
And he'd like to take it all the way to Exchange. And we would use ARPA, we'd use MFT, we would use our MFT grant, and then this other new, there's another new grant available. So it could.
And there's another new grant available, which is the Main Street, the governor just issued his Main Street Rehabilitation Grant. So if you consider Main Street from end to end, where you might put these signage, you could apply for that to say, this will help refresh our Main Street wayfinding signage. So, and he just announced that as a new one. It's available only to municipalities or park districts, because it's about public gathering spaces on Main Street or nearby Main Street.
And that's, to my point, the type of example I was citing when, department heads can be very strategic, focused on, that's a deeply rooted infrastructure project that's gonna resolve a lot of issues, across all utilities, et cetera. So I think sometimes it's our job to look at the more, social infrastructure investments that we believe we need to also make.
And I just want to qualify that particular project that Chad has, it's not just the street, it's the water, sewer, it's everything. And a shared walkway, which would be like 8 feet wide versus a sidewalk, so then that qualifies for safe ways to school grants. I know it's not called that, but basically that's the point. So I think ARPA, we've got a direction. We've definitely got a direction for our 3 existing sign replacement. But if we want to talk about a digital sign, that would be something.
Or pedestrian
needs
bridge.
some direction. Or a pedestrian bridge.
What about the sign we looked at?
And I was gonna say, I guess just to follow up on this, but at the last meeting, Corey and I volunteered to go out and take a look at a few things. We did, I guess, make a suggestion that have maybe a larger version of what we're looking at the other 3 on freeways, but install that near Casey's, but closer to Bester Drive, and kind of cited some general locations in there and angles and this and that. But it would be complementary to the other signs we're doing, but probably just on a bit of a grander scale there. And we also thought that, with the pedestrian bridge and finishing that sidewalk connection, that where we now have the old clubs and churches sign, that could be an opportunity to maybe rethink that entire area. Maybe it includes a digital sign. We maybe place the historic rock down there, which is where it belongs. We could do some things to maybe, kill a few birds with one stone to kind of clean up that area and finish really what was a project. When we redid State Street, there is a bridge over the creek at Crow, and it was meant to, but we just never completed it.
So, and I think like we talked with, I'm support all of it. I just think we need to figure out what's A, what's B, and C, and you have to, we do what we can with reasonable funds, we work towards the others in some sort of strategic.
Yeah, I don't, there's already a billboard on the interstate for Geneseo.
This
Did you say there is?
would be
Yeah, coming from the east, there's one that sits off in the south. The trees are almost covering it now, but there is a billboard that says Geneseo.
this would be a digital.
This would be one that actually advertised your events as long as you properly.
The problem I have with digital advertising, and I've said this several times, is without a stop sign, you can't make it big enough to put a message in that people see every time. Well, let's see it then, because I haven't.
This would be at a minimum 10 foot by 30 feet. But we could go 15 by 30.
I think if you looked at did you look at are you referencing the digital sign that was on YouTube?
Billboard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's being observed from a visitor center tremendous distance away.
What is?
You must not have looked at the attachments on
No.
the agenda. So there was a reference to a YouTube video that showed a brief example of what a sign of that nature could look like.
Of where?
Can you go, Brandon, can you click on that link and maybe fast forward through it so we don't have to watch the the whole thing.
Well, there's some quality, small digital signs if you buy the good ones. You know, like Christ,
Yeah,
Church,
it's skip ads, yeah.
On one of the busiest streets there is, and you can change the message. I think we need one in each end, yeah.
So
Not that big, no.
that one's really large, but right there,
Is that the one you want, Space Center?
yeah,
Countdown?
That's what we're talking about,
yeah.
Although on
Something,
this one, Joey, this is, you would be talking this on Interstate 80.
Yes.
correct.
These would not be the ones we'd be putting.
Yeah, I thought you were,
No.
I'm talking about the one on the
Oh,
corner.
I'm sorry, I thought you were implying that you wouldn't be able to see the sign on the
No, no,
interstate.
she
I'm
was
like,
saying on the
we would have
sign.
no problem seeing the sign.
No, when you put the sign on the corner,
Go back to the LED board, Alpha Digital,
I misunderstood you then.
that would be this one, and
I just,
you would see it.
Well, to Craig's point, you have to have a brief, you have to have something you don't have to really read as you glance, because you're driving by.
You
don't
keep
have-
it very brief. Planes, trains, this is the date.
But I think her, you know, first attempt at a location, if you, next time you travel Interstate 80 from the west to the east, you would be surprised at how long you have visual eyesight of that location. I mean, it's a tremendous period of time. I'm not arguing on behalf of that's the right path to go, but I think until you really strategically look at what we're talking about,
well, what people are we trying to grab from there, I guess? What's the market? The demos say that they're traveling, so why would they stop?
every person you can get into your community becomes a target, doesn't it, Zach? That's what the
I get
data
that, but
says.
I just don't understand, I mean,
Zach, how many people do you get stopped by the chamber that for no other reason decided to pull in Geneseo? I was surprised. It
Yeah,
happens.
there's a lot. I mean, I don't have the exact number, but it's constantly,
Yeah,
almost
and that's-
daily.
That's without any marketing at that interchange. I was surprised when you see how many people just stop, New Mexico, Arizona, all over. I didn't believe it.
Yeah, we have, we have the sign-in thing out there, you know, and we have a lot of people who are signing in, but I mean, people from asking the directions to I've heard about this town, to we like stopping by here and we stumbled across this event. I mean, there are always people stopping by just happenstance because either they know of Geneseo or we've somehow picked their interest to get them to pull off on the interstate. One of the things that I know they complain about a little bit is, oh, I have to drive so far into town to the tourism center. That's kind of by design. You're driving through the town, right? So, but yeah, we have a lot of people.
All the way to the back.
Yeah.
Well, and there's things that you can put on the digital sign, you know, like, I had one before that showed a guy with a toolbox, and it was, we have the tools that you need. And on the wrench, it said revolving loan fund, and on the hammer, it said TIF. And, you know, it was a way to advertise all of our incentives for businesses. And I had another one, it was bring your business to Carlisle, and the reasons why. And so it just gives you a huge platform to have a message about your city.
And these, like this, would be for a lot of the city, the older people in particular, don't have computers, let's say, to put information when that's the biggest complaint is we don't know about some stuff.
Right.
Those are the perfect things out there to do.
You hear it all the time.
I live in the park and I still know what's going on. Like, what's going on in the park today? There's lots of people there.
So if y'all want me to pursue maybe something like that first,
No, that one.
and get some prices on something like that, then we.
Can I ask a stupid question? Why isn't the logo in Geneseo the same? Why does the city have a logo, why does the parks have a logo, and why does the school system have a logo?
Yeah, totally.
As an outsider, I would tell you they're all coordinated. They have-
But they're not the same.
Well, they're different units of government.
Okay, but you don't see if, I guess that's just,
They're all
They are
coordinated.
the same.
Parks,
but they're not the same.
well, they're all a little different.
No, they're not the same. I'm telling you, they're not the same.
Color schemes.
What's that?
Each
But it's
entity
that-
picked
it's
a
that
different
maple
color
leaf.
scheme, but it's all that design right there.
Up there.
That same design.
But that is just recent, Craig, that was developed as kind of.
Because when I went to Geneseo High School football game, the logo for the school is something, but it's not on the field.
We can't control that.
Oh,
No, I
that's-
understand. I'm just saying from a marketing aspect, you want to have as much consistency as possible. And you don't have the consistency.
Website, It's that.
What?
We've got coming forward an intergovernmental agreement with the school district, so I went to their website to pull information. It's that.
I thought it had a G through it or something, a G with a leaf through it.
Football, right?
Yeah,
It's the football program, isn't it?
correct, that's a football program.
But the helmet has a G on it.
Yeah.
Like a Green Bay Packer G. I'm,
No, Green Bay Packers use the Geneseo.
none of it makes sense.
Football is the green machine. That's what the G is for, the green machine.
But there has been with the Park District and the school district going with that look in the school district. But it is a slow process, Craig, because historically it has been kind of a hodgepodge of, even in the city, we've had multiple.
Well, and that's kind of the thinking behind these signs. We want all of our entry signs to be
Yeah.
cohesive.
yeah, how come we haven't talked about the entry sign that we just, our idea on, we're talking about these at the corner where the park is, we're not talking about the one on the entry of Bester.
No, I believe we are. Keith brought it up.
Yeah, but we have, all we're talking about is these digital signs, but she wants to put them, I get it, Sean, I heard you, but we haven't brought it up since. You asked, we need this and this and this and this. If we're gonna put 3 signs at 10 grand a piece on the outside of town where people come in who usually live here, but the main entrance is off 82 where there's no sign, then I would think that should be the priority of putting a sign up.
But
The other 3 are in the works.
so they were in the
But y'all
works, one,
voted for
and we
that.
have funds available to help offset something like I said at that corridor because it lies within the.
I guess, I understand that, but what I've heard about is a billboard, a flashing billboard by Richmond Hill, and this digital sign.
So I am very clear to the council for the second time. Decide what's A, decide what's B, and what's C. It makes no difference to me nor this administration. Just give them direction of what you want to attack first.
That's why I'm bringing it up, because I haven't heard anything since he said something about it.
And I would say that, at least for one person's opinion, that A would be is that, yeah, we need to get a sign back at our main entrance.
And I would agree with that.
So by
But
Casey's.
A can't supersede the 3 that
No,
are.
they were already.
Why? It's the primary entrance to Geneseo.
Because the others are, we're already committed to.
Yeah.
Okay, but
So what's next? I think
It's like
Yeah.
I've ordered the car.
And then
We can't task business one month and come back and decide we want to undo it the next.
I didn't say undo it.
That's
I'm just
bad
saying we're
business
not,
and bad
I
government.
did this at the last council meetings. I brought up the priority. You guys think the priority needs to be the wooden signs that fell down or whatever. That's not the priority. The priority is the main entrance that comes off, which is the highway corridor, which is you're trying to develop. But you're not developing it if you don't put a sign up that says Geneseo. You know how many people come into Walmart at night and ask, where are we at right now? What is this?
The minute you brought it up, I had it on the very next agenda.
I know that.
So to imply that I did not take your request seriously is inaccurate. And we are now addressing it a second time, after a quasi-committee was formed to look at it. And I'm simply asking, if we want to do that sign next, we're not undoing the previous ones. That's
I didn't say we're undoing the previous ones, but I said that should be, you're asking for A, B, and C. I'm giving you A, and you're bringing up digital signs.
I'm not bringing up digital signs. I support, I just said vocally, doing that gateway sign, for the lack of better words, at the interchange first.
What do we have to do for that? I mean, do you have to get Casey's?
And I was gonna say, I think a way forward would be, very first thing is just talk to IDOT and make sure we're all good at getting.
I think first we need to make sure if we're on somebody's property that we're gonna have a landowner that'll work with us. Then, once we have that assurance, then we can get with IDOT and get their approval that there's no right-of-way obstructions. Would seem logical to me.
I would agree with that, although I made the assumption, and I could be incorrect, I think it is IDOT, but yes, verify ownership of that spot that we talked about.
'Cause I thought Casey's owned the wall, and that's where it stopped, and this would be in front of the wall, which would be IDOT.
Well, we'll verify that, verify the ownership, and then if we are able to cite a sign there as we're hoping, and then if we have those approvals, then we can get a hard number on what it would cost to construct a sign at that location. But I would agree.
With ground lighting.
Correct.
Ground lit.
Ground lit like the rest of them, and it would be something that, at least I would think that it would be a priority of what we have on the list of things that we looked at.
Yes.
That would probably be the first priority of where we go next with our sign.
Couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more.
I just, so just one last question, sorry, Sean. But y'all are talking about that sign being bigger than the others, but I think maybe you should see how big the others are going to be first.
And when I say bigger, I guess and to speak, we want to make sure that it's scaled appropriately for the place that we're going to put it.
Okay.
So it may be that that size is fine, but we may have to size it so we don't want it to look like really teeny or like we cramp some giant sign on a little spot. We want it to be perfectly kind of positioned and placed to reflect positively.
And you don't want it too tall. These look tall. You'd want it lower because you've got commercial signage behind it.
And I do think it's smart though, we've got the three-gun process, we're talking about this fourth one, which is brilliant, but I think having the plan for where else do we want them is all new. Love the fact that you've really been pushing a comprehensive future plan for all the stuff, this is no exception.
Especially when there's implied communal support, or at least that's something we, as a council, we should want to partner with. And I don't say prey on it in a malicious way, but partner with to, that's how so much of what you see in Geneseo got done, by government partnering with our community.
Yep,
So, I
just
mean,
found out today there's a new
when
foundation.
somebody brings something forward, I'm gonna always at least give it the due diligence we can to see whether or not we can make something that's common sense work. One last final point under this new business, because Joe mentioned that it's a light agenda. And I had. But seriously, for the public's sake, number one, and I only bring this up because I've had a council member ask me about it. You know, part of a light agenda is at the direction we have given this staff over this last year of boiling it down to bare bone business, being frugal with our finances to try to get a better level of health. And, you don't take on a lot of luxury business at that point. And yeah, there are some heavy hitter items out there that I would also agree should probably be addressed sooner than later, but we've tried and most of the council doesn't really want to deal with them at this point, so we're kind of moving on with some of them. So anybody that thinks there's a light agenda because there aren't things going on in government, it's kind of the circumstances that we have put in place at this time. And I think we're seeing it within the treasurer report and everything else.
So B with signage that Keith and I came up with is down in the lower left there. The signage that they have now for the direction to the downtown, to Richmond Hill, to the golf course, the font is too narrow and it's on a brown background, which is wrong. You can't see it. You can see the green and the white prevalent, but it has to be a different font that's wider and bolder, because you can't read it hardly. If you got to that turn signal Richmond Hill, I'm not sure you turned because you saw the Richmond Hill sign. I think you turned because you know it's close to the interstate.
And yet, in our directional signage in general, some of them are even
it's lacking.
faded out,
Yeah.
what have you, so that.
And it's the wrong font.
Correct.
It is important, readability.
Well, if you're gonna be 3 miles in or 2 miles in or whatever it is from the interstate, and you're pushing the stuff from downtown, you wanna make sure they get to downtown. And either you take State Street or you take Oakwood, you get there regardless, but you may not be where you wanna be. If you wanna go down State, then it should be directed towards State.
Any further new business, open discussion? Okay, moving on the agenda, item 14, payment of city and utility bills.
She's not here, so motion to approve the city bills.
Motion by Arnold. Second by Crowe, roll call.
Kenneth?
Yes.
Barnhart?
Yes.
Crowe?
Yes.
Wackel?
Yes.
James?
Yes.
Arnold?
Yes.
Okay, moving on, public comment related to all other items. City ordinance allows members of the public to speak and give input up to 3 minutes. During public comment, there can be no debate or action by the city council at this time. Yes, sir.
Thanks. Just first a couple observations, and then has a comment on the electronic shredding event. First observations is city attorney in word count really earned his keep tonight. He's usually pretty quiet and he's a lot sick, so appreciate all that. And then Pastor Palm said he didn't love it, but I watched him listen to the discussion intently, and so I just want to recognize him not loving a discussion that was going to occur and the vote that happened. So the electronic shredding event, I wanted to recognize
somebody come and do that collection activity, and that the list of items that you can bring are consistent with whoever is being paid to collect that. And when I biked up, I saw they had a pallet with what looked like a cordless hedge trimmer packed away on top of some other stuff, which wasn't in the list of items that residents could bring in, but was something that they collected. Anyway, it got me thinking about opportunities to leverage that collection to get other items of interest, which may or may not be as lucrative, but would certainly be an equal service to residents and perhaps businesses. Light bulbs is a good one. You know, there's this, the old fluorescent type of light bulbs that are used in a lot of office spaces still. And then the LED light bulbs, what are we doing with those, that kind of thing. So I wanted to ask the city council administrator if maybe we could explore leveraging the shredding program to expand the list of items, and maybe make it not a costly thing for the city, but something that would still deliver on the idea that, hey, we're not just going to throw these things away, there's some residual value to them. It's all about finding a way to collect them in kind of an efficient way. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Yes, Pastor Steve.
I just wanted to say that I did come into this meeting with some concerns about, you know, a very expensive sign potentially. Appreciated, Mayor, your comment about we need to explore parameters. In our church, I led the church through the process of putting a digital sign up. 3 years ago, it was voted down. We persisted and came back 3 years later. It's been fantastic for our church. The pixelization is what matters the most, and I think ours is down somewhere around 8. You were looking at something that was similar in that regard, and it has given us the ability to be able to advertise children's ministry, youth ministry, give the community a better idea of who we are and what we have to offer as a church. So don't mistake me for being against digital signage. I could probably be very much on board with $100,000 of a sign if that really attracted people in. You'd have to sell me a little bit harder on something that was quite as grand as the upper parameter. But I also wanted to comment on the discussion on what we would allow concerning the carrying of beer and the such. I came in here obviously not loving it. I don't know that I leave loving it, but I leave very proud of the way that you all discussed it. And I felt like it was a reasonable discussion. I feel like even though there was passion in the room, it didn't become any kind of an animosity. I understood the reasons a whole lot better. And I think if there's any public that's listening in, they'll have a better understanding of it. So I really thought it was an outstanding discussion and the kind of discussions we need to have. Well, one last little plug. I love the footbridge. I like the sign designs, but I love the footbridge. I don't always love in today's political discourse the language of social infrastructure, but I know what you mean by that, Mayor, that we need to look at more than just what's underneath our streets. What creates an exciting, welcoming community? So I really applaud this council for all of the broad ways that you're looking at. What can we do to make Geneseo a destination? And sometimes I'll agree and sometimes I'll disagree, but I'll always have respect when I can really sense that your heart is in this community and we're trying to do what's best.
Good, thank you. Any other?
Yeah, I've got something.
Yes.
Zach, the golf cart thing on the canal. The canal is used to be one of our biggest assets for tourism, and it still could be. And I had brought up before that footbridge. What's the name of the park out there in Country Manor? Lodge Park. There's no reason why that sidewalk can't continue on a footbridge across to the bike path so that you don't have to be out on the highway to access it on bicycles. Kids don't have to be on the highway. They can go through Country Manor.
If I
On the
remember
sidewalk.
correct, we discussed that before you got on, Bob, and I don't remember what the problem with that was.
We had, actually,
DNR was on.
they actually wouldn't allow a footbridge. They were
sidewalks now, it comes off the slab.
No, the tube would have been down, the canal
The two
would
would
be
have
a
been at
Lodge
Lodge
Park.
If we originally looked at putting a pedestrian bridge to connect to the bike path, but that was not allowed. They would allow a tube and a land bridge.
Correct. So then we tried looking at a different route by utilizing the bridge that's already there, but it's in such disrepair
And
that it
it's so
would have been.
big, right?
Correct,
And
yeah.
the price of steel, because everything was skyrocketing, we were originally looking at 12 foot, and they said, well, it's gotta be a 14-foot culvert.
Because it's gotta be able to fit so many boats, or, I don't
But
remember.
the DNR's got a huge one going over Green River. So obviously it's okay, but I'm saying is for safety, and if you really wanna talk using a viable, way to get people to come to Geneseo too, or bicycling's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Safety-wise, we'd be silly not to have Lodge Park continue across the canal somehow.
Without quoting the exact context of the discussion, because there was many discussions, I can only assure you that it was not for a lack of the council at the time trying.
We tried.
We even had Representative, George, Belovics was here, if I remember correct.
The project started out with the bike path thing, like you mentioned. It was a regional project, we were gonna do it. We went out there, before long, we got several agencies all putting their fingers in the thing.
It kept getting more expensive and more expensive, above and beyond the grant money, and we were actually, I don't wanna say blacklisted, but kind of blacklisted for walking away from that grant because the cost of the project kept getting out of control.
I'm just,
Were we blacklisted for 3 years or something like that?
Yeah.
We turned it down?
Well,
We're blacklist.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that that's something that's, if you really want something to, and safety-wise, you're talking about a footbridge across the creek for safety. Let's utilize it, let's try it again.
Well, and I think if we did it on our own, you know, again, the culvert and the land bridge and stuff, you know, that we had, those agreements were in place. But it was part of that larger overall grant that had additional strings attached. But I don't think that precludes us from just as a city doing it at some point in the future. But yeah, we'd have to budget for that.
Short of meeting their engineering.
Well, right, there's, you know, some hoops to go through, but.
Because the DNR has no money anymore, so they really aren't as strict as what they used to be.
Well, they still have their requirements, though.
Yeah, I understand that.
Talk to Chad about the.
We couldn't touch the brick before either.
We should have some numbers in the file about what that thing is gonna cost.
The grant was supposed to pay for half of it, and it got to the point that it's like maybe it was more.
It'd be times 3 right now. It's obscene.
If you can get it done at all, which is.
Oh, yeah.
I'm just saying that I think it's a viable option.
Yeah,
Maybe
I
that'd be
like that.
something to put on the
We
list
can send,
for.
maybe we can talk on email or go out and look go to the park together and take a look. You know, I'm not exactly familiar with my mind's eye of that area, so I'd like to go take a look, because I'm familiar with the parts that we do the tours on. But yeah, if this is something that A, helps out with emergency services, and B, enhances interest for tourism purposes, you know, Chambers in.
You got 112 miles of bike path on that Hannaford Canal.
Mm-hmm.
You wanna get them to Geneseo, then let's try it again.
Okay, any other public comment related to all our items? Okay, we will move into executive session for ILCS, for 5 ILCS 120-2C5, purchase of property.
Could you
One
hold that
moment.
thought one moment?
Oh, sure, hold it. Oh, all right. We can not go into executive session. I will update the council that I will have a phone conference tomorrow afternoon, and we'll have more information to come.
Motion to adjourn?
Motion by Arnold, second by Barnhart. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Jack, you can get signage up there on 88, because that's my highway.
He keeps missing that. It's embarrassing.
I don't miss it anymore. I used to.